and welcome to another episode of the West Trade Review's interviews with authors. I'm Diane Josefowicz, an associate fiction editor at the West Trade Review. And I'm joined today by Anne Baldo, a writer whose story I Know You Are, But What Am I is in our next spring issue to be published in 2023. Anne is also the author of a collection of short stories, Morse Code for Romantics, to be published by Porcupine's Quill. So thank you for joining me, Anne. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. This is the first interview I've done for West Trade Review, so I'm just getting the hang of it.
Right.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
Well, so let's ease in a little bit. So what can you tell us about this wonderful story, I Know You Are, But What Am I? And if you could also read for us a bit.
Sure. So it's just a story. I was going through some boxes of books in my basement trying to organize, and I came across this magazine I'd had a poem published in a long time ago now. And so I reread it, and part of it was about these two girls watching a neighbor from their window, somebody who was like a little mysterious, maybe a little sinister in a way. And I just thought, I'd like to expand on this a little. I'm always trying to keep myself busy with something. I didn't have anything to write at the time. So I just started from that scene and went from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Can you start us off then with that scene?
Sure. Let me bring it up. All right. I know you are, but what am I? We always knew he'd committed a crime, and at night in our twin beds, we took turns guessing what Mariano had done. A cat burglar, V said, like Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief, a gentleman even as he robbed you, a sleek shadow, waiting. Shimmery wink of swiped jewels, rubies palmed, then gone. No, I said, it must have been something else. July nights were heavy. V's cottage had no air conditioning. We kept the windows open, Lake Erie rushing over the stony beach. We came in the summers with V's parents, but Mariano lived here year-round, alone. A small house, white paint peeling, filmy windows, curtains made of old sheets. The yard never mowed, grass waist-high, sprawling with creeping Charlie, pennycress, a galaxy of dandelions. As we lay in our beds, the headlights of his late-night visitors swept our walls and ceiling. We hadn't been here since last summer, and so V's posters of the Backstreet Boys remained taped up, even though at 18, she had left the band behind. Beside my bed was the one where Howie and AJ were coordinating flannel, and Brian crosses his arms over his chest, his red turtleneck, smiling as if he might love you a little too. So what do you think it is then, Talia? V asked. V had a green lava lamp, a blow-up chair, a ceiling of glow-in-the-dark stars, organized rows of glitter body sprays, bottled emotions perfume, hopeful and lucky and romantic. We stayed up late listening to 89X on V's stereo, waiting for our songs, pressing record for mixtapes. I don't know. Identity theft, illegal gambling. We'd seen him get arrested once, police cars along the ditches up our dirt road. They handcuffed Mariano, pushing him down over the hood of their car. As if he'd caught sight of us watching from our window, for a moment he smiled before he was shuffled away. Counterfeiting, he said, and I said, maybe. I imagined his fingers tinted with ink, his hands dirty with the smell of money, steady as he slipped his fake bills out of his pocket, his wallet, into the unknowing world. Still, we watched at windows, waited, tallied his visitors, longed to burn for him like a flicked match snuffed in the wet grass. We were friends forever, since we used to fight and say, I know you are, but what am I? Licking Smarties to smear the reds over our lips. Truly believed in our glamour as we put on our mother's suede pumps, mint green and peach, gold clip-on earrings. Tripped through our living room singing Wannabe, the beginning where Scary Spice whips around in her lime green crop tank, says she'll tell you what she really wants. Photos of us butterfly clipped, roller skating at wheels or dancing. V's hip up against mine, my hand on her arm, nails painted with polish, supposed to shift colors, revealing your true feelings. 12 on V's front porch, first day of high school, knee socks, gray uniform kilts pinned at the side. Mine drooping over my knees, V's rolled tight, and high as she could go without getting detention. Then we were teenagers and we fell in love with little monsters. Boys who got drunk and called us sluts. Boys like V's last boyfriend who made her change the station when the Ying Yang Twins came on the radio as they whispered the lyrics to their song, Wait. And boys who held you down in their mother's basement, counting on no one, wanting to make a scene. So Mariano, his strangeness, his late hours and night visitors, the morning he was arrested in his driveway, none of this deterred us. All these things about him, delinquent and unknowable, only drew us closer. We had been in love with little monsters for a long time now. We were ready for something big.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to revisit those wonderful first moments of that story.
Thank you.
I wonder if you could say a little bit about how the story, you've talked a little bit about how it comes into being. And as you were reading, I started to hear references to music. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about music in the story and in your process. There's so much music in the story. I was tempted to make a playlist, and I still might. I still might, to accompany it. And so I'm wondering, where does music fit in for you in your process and as you were developing this story?
I usually have music on when I'm writing, just whatever songs I'm kind of really into at the moment. And a lot of the times, I guess like my quiet time is usually when I'm driving somewhere and I have the radio on too. And that's usually sometimes where I'll be kind of, just thinking about what I'm working on. So there's always, music involved. I guess I find it just helps me focus in a way. The other thing is, I guess when it comes to this story is a few years ago, and I don't know, maybe this study's been like refuted, I don't know, but it was this whole study about how the music we listen to, particularly when we're teenagers, and you're going through a lot of transition, and your brains are really changing. It becomes like almost like encoded in your memories, right? So even years later, you'll hear these certain songs, or even just hear like the name of it a little on the radio. And I know for me it is true. I don't know for everyone, but it will really pull you back like almost immediately to a memory you associate with the song or a person, a time in your life. So I thought that kind of fit as well with the story because, it's something the narrator's kind of, I guess, grappling with throughout the story, is her memories and, the time in her life where she is, I think, maybe 18 or so, and she is going through a lot of transition herself. So, there was that aspect. And then I think as we get older, it changes a little for most of us, but I feel like when we're younger, a lot of the times the music we listen to or the bands that we like, they're part of our self-image or our identity. And you really sometimes like align yourself with particular people based on that and make these judgments that are probably not really fair, based on it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, I don't know, I guess it was just what was on my mind at the time.
I love how you've answered that question, and particularly how you've connected it to the characters themselves and their situation. Of course, they're teenagers. Music is a huge part of being a teenager, and it's just as you say, the things you listen to at that age do, when you hear them later on, bring back that whole
Yeah.
world, right? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So that gives me a little bit of insight into your writing process. It sounds like music's a big part of it. This mode of driving and not being quite in front of your computer, but also kind of working. It sounds like that's also part of your process. Could you say a little bit more about your process and kind of clue our readers, our listeners into that?
Sure. It's not the smoothest process or the best process. I usually have to sit down and write at night. My kids are young, so it has to be when they're in bed, and then it has to depend on them staying in bed, which doesn't always happen. So I think that's why I enjoy writing short stories, and they're often kind of fractured a bit like themselves because they're kind of written in little pieces. I don't really write a lot anymore from point A to point B. I found when I was younger, that was very how I was. It was, I started and then I finished. Now I like to have like a starting point, maybe a few scenes, a few things that are on my mind at the time, and
Right.
I'll get them down.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of try to tie it together.
Do you think that has anything to do with like changes in your life, like having children? So like going from point A to point B is sort of like maybe a particular privilege or aspect of being, I guess, younger? Because I'm just asking because exactly the same thing happened to me.
Really?
Yeah, 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 and it did seem to be connected to that.
I think so. I think so. I think I can't speak for everybody, but it sounds like you kind of like you relate. I find like when I was maybe 17, 18, 20, even 25, I could really just sit and focus completely on writing. And now I feel like I never really can, because even if they are in bed, it's always like, oh, I hear someone down the hall and somebody's
Mhm.
playing in the bathroom again. So it's a lot of like stop and start, I guess.
Somebody
Um,
fell out of bed. Somebody
yeah.
jumped out of bed.
There's always something, right?
Yep.
My youngest is 2, so it's still pretty
Oh,
busy. And
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
others, they don't really sleep very well either. So yeah, I think part of my mind's always a little bit distracted. And I think, I don't know, it's just kind of how I've gone to, I don't know if it's a little bit technology too. I'll sit and write on the computer and then I'll decide like, I'm gonna look up whatever, an article maybe about something I'm writing. So I'll get distracted by technology too. And that maybe
Right.
also plays a role.
Yeah, that plays a role as well, for sure, for sure. Okay, so I have another question for you about your process. So I joined West Trade very recently, and as I was being onboarded, I learned that you'd previously submitted another piece to West Trade that our editorial team really liked, but it still wasn't quite a fit for the magazine. And what I was told was that you received an encouraging rejection. And now I have complicated feelings about this kind of communication as someone who writes a lot, submits a lot, and receives a lot of no. I mean, as we all do. But I've also received my share of encouraging rejection notes with better and worse outcomes. And so I'm wondering what advice you would have for writers who find themselves in that situation of having written a great story and it's not quite a fit for the journal, but you're getting encouraging feedback. Like, what do you do with that mixed message?
I think for me, like I would see it definitely as a gift because someone's taken the time. They obviously liked at least part of it or
Sure.
saw that you were on the right track. So number one, you kind of know like what I'm writing is maybe somewhat of a fit for this magazine. Maybe not this piece in particular, but if they say to try again, I definitely will. And I know I don't know personally, but I can imagine that you're reading a huge volume of
That's well, yeah.
submissions.
Yeah.
So I mean, if something you wrote stuck out in any way, I would say go for it. I mean, it's always bittersweet because it's so close, right? But
Yeah.
I would say not to give up and to keep that publication in mind. I was grateful because there are primarily rejections when you're writing, right? So just even that, like we liked it, but I'll take it. I take that as a huge win, I guess.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, my last question for you today. So you've got a story collection coming out, Morse Code for Romantics. I love that title. It's
Thank
so
you.
good. And it's coming from Porcupine's Quill. Can you tell us a little bit about that collection? Particularly, when can we expect it? I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you. Really happy to hear that. It is coming out. They said October of
Wow.
this year, but they also said it's a bit of a guideline. Like the publishing world can be a little unpredictable, I guess. So
Sure.
hopefully October. You can pre-order it now if you want on a lot of websites, Barnes and Noble, I believe. I think Chapters. I don't. My mom said she pre-ordered it, so.
Yay.
Very
Good.
grateful
Yeah.
for.
I'm
Like,
glad. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
Is it all new stories? Have some of them been published? I know you are. Is that part of the collection?
I wrote this one after I had been accepted by Porcupine's Quill.
Ah,
Actually, pretty recent, just a few months ago, I would say.
okay.
Maybe March, April. So it's not in the collection. It is about, I think, about 12 short stories. They're still kind of figuring out maybe which ones to cut or edit a bit.
Sure.
Some of them have definitely been published. I believe the one that you mentioned earlier was in her mind is going to be part of it.
Right.
Some of them are new.
Okay. So
I'm
yeah, let me
still.
let me let me interrupt there just to
Oh,
say, yeah, this is a story that you published in another journal called Hermine. Really wonderful. They published an annual issue, and I just read the whole thing. And your story was a standout. I am blanking on the title. What was it called?
Oh, How We Miss You. How about joining us?
That's right. Oh, How We Miss You. How about joining us? Another standout story. And I'm so glad to see it. So I have one last question again about Morse code for romantics. So why the title? What is that about?
Oh, that just came from the title of a short story in it, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah.
And I always kind of I read a lot. So at the time I was reading about a lighthouse keeper who was using Morse code. And I thought that's such an interesting form of communication that, I mean, I've never personally used. And
Right.
the story, like a lot of the stories, is about somebody who's having a hard time letting go of something. So in this
Yeah.
case, she's having a hard time letting go of the person she loves, and so are some of the other characters she encounters. So it's just kind of a way to tie that all together.
Okay.
There's not a lot of real Morse code in it. Unfortunately, I don't really speak. Nobody speaks.
Yeah, that's good. I don't read it either. So
No,
we're here
I can't.
to read Morse code. Yeah, I don't understand it. Let me put it that way.
No, they told me they did incorporate some into the cover of the book. So I trust. I mean, I can't read. I looked it up and it is Morse code for SOS, I think. So I thought
Oh,
that was
cool. Oh, I can't wait to see this. So it's in the design. Oh, that
yeah.
sounds really good. Okay, well, so that I think we're coming up on about the 30-minute mark. So I just I want to thank you for joining us today for this interview. Thank you so much for being with us. And I want to just turn back to the audience now just to say to all of you out there, I hope you'll check out Anne's story in the spring 23 issue, along with all the other great stuff that we've got planned for that issue that's going to be in there. And again, thanks again, Anne, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your acceptance letter. Have a great day. I appreciate it.
Such a pleasure and a privilege. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.